But first we have Nico. He's a theist, and he says, how come some conservatives not liking that historians, scholars, and researchers found out the translations in the Bible or any other divinely inspired books are translated wrong? That's what it says. So we're going to get a little more
Okay.
information about that.
So what I mean by the question I'm asking is that there's a lot of research going around. I've been seeing that people that have gone to like do the research on the translations and going back to these original translations of these divinely inspired books, or we're not reading it correctly. Like for example, like say I just saw a few things. Like for example, the say in Genesis, for example, we are created by Adam and Eve. Like we know that's not true. There's no way that two people like Adam and Eve were created. We're powerful. They are 8 billion people. There's no way.
So Nico, let me just hold
it's
on a
like,
sec. So that's a bit of a change of topic, right? So like whether or
my
not
bad.
something is true,
So yeah,
yeah, because whether or not just hold on, but whether or not something is true doesn't affect translation. Like the original thing could be also false. Like you could be translating. I can say I own a pig, and then that gets translated to French. It might be translated correctly, and you say, well, I don't actually own a pig, so it was translated wrong. Is not really an argument, right? So separate topics of whether it's true and whether it's translated well. Carry on.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous. So.
Oh, sorry, and I hope
No
I didn't make it
problem.
worse.
Oh no, you're fine. This is real. It's good for me because makes me uncomfortable to actually question this type of stuff and hear from other people. So,
Okay.
but the one thing is that because I remember asking this, like for me, I've been kind of struggling because I'm reading the Bible, but a lot of things that I've been like for my own research I've been doing for that last talk I had in the Q&A, it really opened my mind a lot, and a lot of it doesn't make sense to me. Maybe it's kind of go with this question where maybe we're looking at this the wrong way, and if this is the right way of looking at it, then that means this is like not the right way to lead our lives, or this is not morally right. Like for example, like slavery is correct in the Bible, and also women be silent in church. That's wrong. And it's in there for, why is it in there for? Is it just for control? Is this for something that we don't want to, if we go deep into the rabbit hole, if we question it, it's like, oh, that's wrong, or saying, oh, that's something different, then how come people getting mad or pissed off at it because we're finding out, or I think the right way of saying it is like we're intelligently figuring out, oh, this is not right, like morally right in a society. Then how come people are defending that claim, and what can we do in the future that we can stop, you know what I mean, being narrow-minded and looking at the correct way morally for society. That aspect. Hope
Paul,
that
this
makes
one's
sense.
Go ahead,
all
Erica.
you.
This is all me.
No,
All
no,
right.
no.
Well,
This is all you.
all right. So, Nico, I feel like your whole question is morphed to, and let me, if I get this correct, we have a better understanding now of what causes harm and what helps flourishing. We have a better understanding of that now. And as we evaluate now things like slavery or misogyny or all these things, we are now better to identify. We're better equipped to identify, oh, this is harmful. And in that identification, some of us notice that, oh, some of your sacred books don't align very well to the goals of reducing harm and increasing flourishing. So some of us then choose, well, you know what? In that case, we're going to reject the books and hold on to what's demonstrable about causing harm and increasing flourishing. And I think what you're asking is, why don't some people also make that journey? and instead hold on and try and defend in some way the things that cause more harm and that decrease flourishing. Am I accurately rephrasing to you what you're asking?
Yeah, yeah, because I think you got a nail on the head, and because I've been seeing even on social media and other things, they're leaving out the like slavery and everything else. They're leaving out this stuff. They're always talking about the good stuff in it. I'm like thinking,
Hmm.
well, we get there's probably some wisdom in there, but how come you're leaving out the bad stuff? Because, like you said, we are
And
able to nowadays figure out we know that's wrong. So why are we
right,
why are you not looking at that?
it's a great question. Unfortunately, and let me just preface that by saying we don't actually need the the holy books to tell us about the good things either, right? The good things we can get almost entirely from empathy, which, as Erica can
Mm.
attest, in social species, empathy is a survival trait. And so so we don't actually need the holy books to tell us that, oh, I don't like to be stolen from, so maybe I shouldn't steal from other people. Like, that's just kind of a thing that empathy gets you. So we don't need the holy books even for the good things. Unfortunately, and
And I,
I will speak
yeah,
only from my. Go ahead. Did you have a comment on that part?
yeah. Actually, I was gonna say, yeah, you're right because I've seen like some videos about and also I learned through when I was in school about like for animals that have these type of relationship bond, even though they're different species, we're able to help each other out in the wildlife. And and for us, we can kind of relate to that because I didn't get the why I learned what's wrong was through history, through human history. I didn't get it from the Holy Bible or anything else. I got it through us from history and what I've seen through etc. What is bad and what is good and what can we find in the middle for everybody to be good for society and accomplish their hopes and dreams and goals and etc. So yeah, I'm just agreeing with you that yeah, there is proof in the pudding that there are ways in the animal kingdom and also within us to see we can see what's good and bad just by how even though the baddest person can be that bad, he can in a way you'll see that slight empathy within them because we see it throughout the animal kingdom and also through everywhere else. And I do agree that I've seen that if it was on
Yeah,
film or
you've hit the nail on
so.
the head there, right? Like you find empathy elsewhere in the animal kingdom and you find it extensively. And I think what you're touching on here is like a contradiction that you've probably noticed, right? Where it's like people teach a lot of the good stuff in the Bible, like good pretty rudimentary, not rudimentary, but pretty like universal truths, right? Like the golden rule. And they teach that and they don't touch all of this
I've
other
heard of
stuff.
that. Yeah, the golden rule. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but it's like, they teach this stuff that's palatable and oftentimes ignore the slavery or the misogyny or the genocide that happens. And I think you've rightly noticed that that kind of contradicts the whole thing, right? Especially a lot of which you get later
Mhm.
in the New Testament. That's all seemingly supposed to do away with that stuff in the Old Testament. And then it pops up a little bit in the New Testament as well, and I think that can be pretty alarming, right? Like if you're used to being,
Yeah,
spoon-fed
and
one version, it can really suck to pull the rest of the banana peel down and see that it's covered in
correct.
bruises.
The
So I
one thing
empathize.
I have to ask
That's
you
not
both.
human.
Oh, my bad. You're talking. My fault.
No, 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 I
Go
was
ahead,
just
Nico.
concurring.
So I have a question. So in the New Testament, I just want to make sure, or and also maybe almost to the New Testament, was there actually that God did command a certain amount of people to slaughter a whole village? Because I've heard this so many times about it. I know Abraham's story, which I agree is wrong. But
Right.
is it true in the Bible that God did command a certain amount of people to slaughter women and children because of something else that they like because someone did that and the rest of it.
Yeah,
And
so a
also
couple of
another one did
go ahead.
go ahead. Oh, I was gonna say also I've heard this before from other great thinkers like Alex O'Connor and also a few others that Jesus did say that something about slaves obey your earthly masters or as you obey Christ or something like that. I've heard that.
So
So I just want to make
you're
sure
partially
like
correct,
hmm
and you're partially incorrect on a bunch of those things. So a bunch of those things
okay,
you
that's
mentioned.
fine. Like I said,
So
I don't know. I'm still
yeah, no,
reading,
that's
so
great. I
So
will
so
tell
Nico, let's
you
yeah, Paul's got this. He's got this.
I will tell you
You got
just and again double check me as ever all of us should be double checked, but because it's been a few years since I memorized a lot of this stuff. But so the slaves obey your master thing, I believe, was actually Paul the apostle, not Jesus.
hmm
But that absolutely is in the New Testament. Slaves obey your masters, as and in the other things you talked about, the genocides are not New Testament things; they are Old Testament things. They are in the Hebrew Bible portion, and
hmm
so one of them for the worst atrocity, the worst genocide is the flood. If you believe it was a worldwide flood, right? Then God actually just
hmm
went ahead and killed everyone but 8 people. So that's pretty. That's a lot. That's a lot of killing. But also in terms of the main other genocide that people talk about, even though there are others, is the Canaanites. So what happened was
I've heard a
according
little
to
bit
the
about that. Yeah.
according to the Old Testament, when the Hebrews left, when the Israelites left Egypt, they needed a place to go, and the Canaanites were
Yeah.
already standing in the land where God told them they were going to be, and so they were told
Oh,
to
the Holy
go and
Land. Is that correct?
correct, and God basically commanded them in a lot of this conquest era to go around to different cities and to kill people, and in fact, even to one extent where sometimes they were being punished for not killing enough people. Sometimes the king would hold back some of the better sheep and cattle or the prettier women. And he was like, no, no,
hmm
you're supposed to. I am actually angry at you that you didn't do all the killing. So it's tough to justify. There is a lot of nuance
hmm
in those discussions, but you are not wrong. Those are the stories. There's in Psalms they talk about
Yeah.
how they gleefully bash the babies heads against rocks. Like that's just those are troublesome passages
hmm
if you're a Christian or of the Abrahamic faith. So those do absolutely exist. Go look them up and read them for yourselves. But I am often shocked to the extent to which adherents of those religions will defend passages like that, or passages where, for example, in Leviticus 21 or so, where you can beat your slave, and as long as they don't die within the first several
And
days,
also it shows
that
them
was a
how to
moral
do it.
thing to do.
That's the
Yeah,
thing.
and show them how to do
Yeah.
it, and that you can pass along ownership of these people to your children, to other generations, and which markets are you supposed to buy people from, and not. These are troublesome things. I would say, if you want to hold to these beliefs. So
Mm.
yes, I can just I guess affirm that in broad strokes, those things that you said are in the book.
Well, they're
And one other
unpalatable,
thing.
right? Like, people don't wanna
Oh,
hear
go
that,
ahead.
and yeah, it's unpalatable to hear, people don't like it, and, we've come a long way since then as a species, and we've recognized more
That's the truth.
universally, but not entirely universally, unfortunately, that most of this stuff is pretty heinous, and so it's easier, I think, for a lot of people to point to the stuff in the Old Testament and be like, "Well, God was different back then, but he's also consistent in his character," and, like, those 2 things don't
hmm
those 2 things have never, like, really meshed very well in my mind. But, you read this stuff, and to me, it sounds exactly like what people would do and say if they needed justification to do something, right? Like, if
hmm
you going to the Holy Land, you've just had a really shitty time in Egypt, and then you're like, "Ah, here's our perfect spot, but there's people there. What are we gonna do?" And then it's like, "We're not supposed to kill," and then some guy steps up and he's like, "Well, actually, God said it's chill this time. In fact, he said that we're supposed to do it, so we're good. We're totally good.
Yeah.
We can go in there and take whatever we need." And then you do it. I mean, this is classic human behavior. You see it at every level across every historical period. I think that explains the vast majority of it, in a lot more of
Well,
it explains
yeah,
a
in
lot.
history, I've learned in history, you're right, that in almost every culture, it's almost the same thing. it's similar, how similar they are, because all they wanted to do is conquer each other for power, money, or land, and put their religion on others. If you don't believe in
Well, and
this religion, you'll die. Period.
Well,
And
and
that's
I empathize with the
yeah.
progressive Christians who point to the New Testament and they're like, well, like this Jesus came to undo all of this stuff and we shouldn't do all of that stuff anymore and it's bad and we should love one another and like I think that's great. I
Mhm.
love that for them, but I don't find that
Mhm.
compelling personally as like a why you should believe statement. You know what I mean? Um
Mhm.
that's just where I'm coming from though.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like actually that statement you just said for me was Abraham's story that caught me off guard. Is where I had to reread it again. Is where God told Abraham to murder his son as a sacrifice, and then before he did that, angel came up, saved his son, and said, "Oh no, you don't need to do that. It was just a test." I'm like thinking like, well, for one, if we were at the time, we can figure out that was a test to begin with. We don't have to obey that. Like, why? Like, it's kind of like a saying like, who would? I've heard this in a film. If someone asked you to jump off a bridge, will you do it? No, you wouldn't. Why wouldn't you? So
I
it's
didn't
like
need a
kind of
film. My
asking like
mom asked me that every day.
if God told me to say kill my dog as a sacrifice to test my faith, that seems unfair. Legitimately, it really does seem unfair. Why would I do that? You're testing me. Why? I already like why do you want to test that? That's a very hard, that's sad and a very sad way of looking at it. And
Nico, let me give you
I had this
a quick
yeah.
paraphrase. I'm just going to give you a quick paraphrase of a saying that helped me figure this out. Was morality is doing right no matter what you're told. Religion is doing what you're told no matter what is right.
Hmm.
And that's kind of that as soon as I started thinking about it that way, it's religion is about doing what you're told
Interesting.
and or
Yeah,
finding
that's
justification.
interesting.
So
I mean, I think you're on the
Oh,
right
one
path,
more.
Nico.
Oh, go ahead.
Asking these important You're asking really important questions, I mean, it's important to ponder this and come to your own conclusions. So I think you're on the right track.
One more. So this is very exciting to me. I don't know if you guys know about this, but you know the famous painting over in Rome of Michelangelo's painting of God's hand touching Adam? You know that
indeed.
famous
Yeah,
painting by any
the
chance?
creation, yeah.
So if you
Yeah,
look
yeah.
at God's painting, it's actually, if you guys can pull up the picture and see, if you look at it, it actually looks like
I'm on the edge of my seat. It looks like what?
Oh no, did we lose him?
Nico, are you still there? What does it look like? Nico, no! Oh my god.
I would bet he
Oh
was going to
well.
say that it looks like a brain.
Oh, sometimes you do get that. Yeah.
Was he gonna is that what he was gonna say, Nico? Okay. Well, I think we lost him.
Well,
Okay, Nico,
well,
I'm, dro-
I hope
I'm
that was a
dropping the
helpful
call, my
conversation
friend.
for him.
Yeah, I hope so too. Thank you, Nico. Best of luck. Shoot. All right. Well, I guess we'll never know. We'll never know what
Never
it was.
know.
We'll never know what it's supposed to look like.